Award-winning journalist Robert Timm has spent decades in broadcasting, sharing great stories and cultivating even greater relationships. Like me, he wasn't immune from workplace abuse, which bullies your brain and leaves you questioning, am I the crazy one? I am so excited to speak to you, Mr. Robert Timm, who is 65 years old, 65 years young, I will say today, because I know, you look marvelous, my friend, marvelous. You look so good. How are you today
Oh, thank you.
on your birthday? Happy birthday.
I'm doing great. I have
Mhm.
I've moved back to kind of my roots here in Minneapolis,
Mhm.
and I'm really glad to be here. I've got uh, friends that I've known well since high school, and you can do the math on
Mm.
that one. And it just feels like home. I loved living in Sarasota. I made some wonderful friends, including you,
Yes.
but it never really felt like home. And where I
Mm.
am now, it does feel like home. And I think that's so important. I've been able to sort of give myself time to recuperate,
Mhm.
readjust, reflect,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to climb my next mountain.
Ooh, I love that. Before we start talking about the mountain, because I love that idea of climbing the next mountain and how it doesn't matter what our age is. Like we don't need to limit ourselves. Like if you want to do something, you can do it. Let me
Absolutely.
back, yeah, let me back up a little bit first.
Yeah.
Because I know people are going, so how do you know this man from Sarasota? The beautiful sunshine state of Florida, where it is literally sunny pretty much every day, with the exception of a few showers here and there, maybe a hurricane here or there. But I met Mr. Bob Timm on social media. Don't ever underestimate the power of social media. We met on LinkedIn because I reached out to him and his profile said that he was a former employee at WWSB, which is the ABC affiliate here in Sarasota. And I decided, I said, well, you know what? I've got a little extra time. Maybe I can go and see what's happening. Because, once you're in news, you never get rid of the news in you.
No,
Right, Bob?
you
Never get
do.
rid of
It's with you forever. You're so right.
Yeah, it just stays with you. It's part of who we are because it really is a passion, and it's also, I believe, a ministry for both of us. We love storytelling, and so I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and Bob responded pretty much instantly. And I just asked a question about, you know what, I'm interested in joining, a local news outfit. What do you think? And from there, our friendship just blossomed. We agreed to meet. We met at a coffee shop one time, and we sat there which felt like all of 10 minutes, but maybe it was like 3 or 4 hours. And I just had the most amazing conversation with Bob. 3 hours. I had the most amazing conversation with Bob. He is he's my brother. He's my brother from another mother. I want you to know that because there are very few times in life when you meet people who are genuine, who are real, who are authentic, who are just good human beings. And Bob is that man. Bob is that person. Bob is my friend. And we've only known each other for less than a year, but I feel like I've known Bob forever. So he was here in Sarasota. We met for 3 hours, great conversation. And all of a sudden, Bob says, Andrea, I'm moving. We were going to do some things together here locally, but he goes, I'm moving back to my hometown. And make another long story short, we had a kind of goodbye lunch at one of our favorite Mexican places in Venice, Florida, Mi Pueblo, which is also in Sarasota. And we had a great time. Yes, a great time. And he's just that guy. He's that guy that I want to be in my life all the time. But we're connected, not just from as a journalist, and I'll let Bob explain what he has done over his phenomenal career, but we're bonded as human beings, and that really is the essence of life. It's the essence of life. Yes, there are cultural differences in the world, but I truly believe that the more that we share with one another, the more that we talk about our differences as well as our similarities, that is what this world is all about. It's about the human connection. And so I'm connected to Bob, and he, like I said, is one of my favorite people. And I just want people to understand, what have you done in this world of journalism that we love so much? Because it's extensive, and I don't want to get it wrong. So I will just let you take the floor.
Well, I'll give you the way edited down Cliff Notes version because But when you get as old as I am, you end up
Young.
having a lot of time to do a lot of things. But I actually began my career. I was very fortunate. I began my career here in the Twin Cities. And it was at a station that is now referred to as Care 11, NBC affiliate. Fantastic station. The people, and I was there a very long time ago when the station was known as WTCN. And I had the people in the newsroom across the station we were family, and we were not the number one station, and we weren't the number two station, and there were some days we weren't even the number three station. But we had an incredibly talented, hardworking, collaborative team. And I cannot stress those words enough. But that's how I began my career. That's how I learned hands-on in this business, was working in that newsroom. And I went on, worked in some other stations. I began as a news photographer, news cameraman, and you might see, like behind me here, I've got, some cameras. I started collecting them a few years ago from way back when they were boat anchors. But anyway, I transitioned to becoming a producer, newscast producer, and then went back to shooting. I spent 11 years with, I guess you mentioned a station already. I mentioned station. I spent 11 years working with NBC News. And I worked on everything from Meet the Press to Dateline to the Today Show, nightly news, the variety of MSNBC programs that were on during the day and at night. So it was a very active and fulfilling place and experiences. And again, worked with an amazing group of talented, committed, just really, really great people. After 9/11, got out of the business for a few years, started my own production company, moved to Seattle. And from there on, I did some other things. And a little over 4 years ago, it was January 2020, I moved to Sarasota to retire. Because what do you do when you retire? You move to Florida.
Go to Florida. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. They were closer to heaven
So
here.
I moved to Florida with the idea I'm going to retire. I'll network a little bit, get to know some folks. And there I am in Sarasota and loving it and getting heavily involved with some nonprofits. Even throughout the pandemic, I was able to do stuff remotely and, safe distancing and all of that. And sat on the board of one nonprofit, an organization called Also Youth in Sarasota, in Bradenton. Wonderful organization, alsoyouth.org. Got to give them a plug, as well as some other nonprofits. And then I was offered a job. I was getting bored, even with all the nonprofit. I'm not one to retire, Andrea. What can I say?
I know. Same here. I know.
And I was offered a job at a TV station in Sarasota, and I jumped at the chance to get back into a newsroom, to be part of a collaborative, hardworking team of people who would, really work together on a daily basis to provide the best programming we could. And that's what I was hoping to get into. And to some degree that happened, but to a large degree it didn't happen, to be very frank. There are some amazing people there, people whom I have great respect for. And, but it wasn't for me. We'll just, for the moment, leave it at that.
You mentioned some words that are very, very important to the both of us as we've gotten to know each other. And that is collaborative
Mhm.
and compassion and kindness. How that literally is the foundation for who you are as a person. Those are those
Mhm.
character values that I know are unwavering for you. When
Mhm.
you think about your long career, your storied career, and the many people, the hundreds of people you've come into contact with,
Oh god,
especially
now I'm
those who
really
you've
feeling old.
I don't know. I didn't make you that. I know. I'm so sorry. No, it's just I call us seasoned. We're seasoned. Like, we're that fine wine that just, after a number of, 30, 40 years, you're like,
You're
break
digging
open.
yourself
This is
out of a
really good.
lovely hole
I'm
there, Andrea.
I'm trying.
And that
I'm
and
trying.
I gotta say to the folks who are watching, that's part of like you are like a sister from another mother for me. And
Yeah.
teasing like we're doing right now is
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
part of that affection because you're
Right.
doing it out of having fun with the other person and
Yeah.
expecting a
Right.
little um
Well, so
kind of a
yeah.
jab, but it's not
Just
meant in
yeah.
a hurting way. And there is a difference
There's a
between
difference.
a little bit of teasing and kidding around
Mhm,
because
mhm.
I am probably one of the most self-effacing people you'd meet.
Me too. Yeah. Me too.
And
Me
and it just I have to stay humble, otherwise I would be
Yeah.
totally out of control.
Mhm.
So my humility keeps me in check. But
But,
anyway, that's
you've worked with some of the best journalists in the world. I mean,
I have
big,
worked
big
with some
names, big names, amazing journalists. Yes.
amazing
Yeah.
people at NBC
Mhm.
and met other people from other networks while covering stories where you interact with, folks from other networks.
Right.
And I was
Mhm.
so fortunate to work with truly some of the
That's
greats at that
mhm.
network, both in front of and behind the camera.
And saying that, because you've worked with great people, we talked about collaborative, compassion, and kindness. When you don't feel it, whether it's in a workplace or any other environment, you know the difference. You know the difference, correct? You know the
Oh,
difference. Your body
absolutely.
tells you. What was that
Absolutely.
like for you? Yeah, what was that like for you when you first felt as if something doesn't feel right here?
Oh, in Sarasota.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Mhm. Or any place that you've been.
I feel like I'm a little bit in a tough spot in that my silence is not for sale, as
Mm.
is the
Oh,
name of this program. But I want to be very clear that
mm,
I work with some wonderful, amazing people,
mhm.
and others who are maybe less so. And uh,
Yeah.
sometimes it only takes one bully,
Mm, mm.
one person who has some deep set issues, who
Yeah,
can make everybody's life a living hell. And
yeah.
you either roll with it,
Mhm,
or you stand up to it.
mm,
There's a great old Woody Allen joke.
mm.
Um, Guy goes to a psychiatrist
Uh-huh.
and he said, "Doctor, please help me.
Mm.
My brother, he thinks he's a chicken." And the psychiatrist kind of leans back and thinks for a moment and then he says, "Well, I can help you with that. I can help him with that."
Okay.
And
Mhm.
then the patient says back to the doctor, "Well, yeah, but we need the eggs." Think about it. But the idea that I was working with someone who um, thought that they were something other than
And
they were or were
yeah.
not,
Mhm.
but they were kept around because they needed the eggs.
They needed the eggs. It's interesting because as we have been talking amongst, between the two of us, and just in general, as it relates to workplace bullying, workplace
Mhm.
abuse, toxic environments, that conversation is really being had on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Like I begin, there's something like there's a movement. Do you feel that there's this movement where people are going, you know what? I've been in a toxic work environment, working with people who are narcissists. What do you think it is? Why is it that why do you believe that those people somehow seem to be the ones who are always in positions of power and or management or as a supervisor, and yet management sometimes they don't do anything to hold those people accountable, and why they're able to thrive so much.
Speaking of management, um, sometimes people are, it's like the old Peter principle. You're promoted and you're promoted and you're promoted to your highest level of incompetence.
Mm, say that.
But I've also worked with some highly competent managers and leaders.
Mhm,
I also want to be very clear that um, yes, had um, I was in a toxic environment, um, but it was not necessarily management.
mhm,
Um,
mm,
the management may have contributed to it through silence. Again, getting back to the Woody Allen joke, because they needed the
mhm.
eggs from
Yeah,
this
yeah.
chicken.
Mhm,
Um, but it's just amazing how one person can absolutely pollute the entire environment. And it came down to, if you were, boy, I have to also compare in a tangential way a certain former president who kept highly transactional relationships with people. And as long as you are good for me, you're my friend. As long as you make me look good, you're my friend. As long as you don't counter anything that I say, you're my
mhm.
friend.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's really powerful, because what you're saying is, if there is kind of a quid pro quo with management, and as you mentioned, they're receiving something out of it, then the likelihood of them holding other people accountable, or that person, if you will, accountable, it's probably not going to happen, because their lifeblood, if you will, is being potentially stripped away from them. Like we
Hmm.
talked about the
Hmm.
chicken and the egg. And I just wonder, like, what did that do for you? How long did you last before you said, you know what, I've got to walk away?
I was only there for just shy of 3 months,
Okay.
and
Oh,
it
wow.
broke my heart to leave.
Mm,
But
mm,
my physical health was being affected, my mental health was being affected. And when you sign a contract um, with certain companies that own certain TV stations and you're in a certain position,
mhm,
the only way to get out of the contract is to buy yourself out of it.
mm,
Or you get that initial 90-day window
mm.
where it's almost like a probationary period.
Yeah.
But I learned enough and I saw enough probably within my first couple of weeks. But I was
Mhm.
still at that point of I can work with this.
I'm gonna
And
stick.
as much as I've worked with some great professionals along the way, I've also worked with some difficult people. And that was okay, because at the end of the day, they may have been very difficult,
Mhm.
but they were not out to make your life a living hell. And
So
there's a
there is a
difference.
difference.
There is a real
Mhm.
difference there. Um, and I realized, but I kept working at it. I, kept going to management and saying, hey, listen, this is happening, that is happening. I kept records. I
Mm.
documented dates, times, who else heard what was being said,
Yeah.
what was being said, and recollecting this and created documents.
Mhm.
Um, because I knew that I needed to document this. I had to keep track of what was going on, because some of these things, there were days, Andrew, there were some days I thought that I was working in a sitcom. I was actually like
Yeah.
part of a sitcom TV show, because some of the just
I've said that too. Mhm.
and can I say the word batshit on this
Yeah.
program?
Yes, you can
Batshit,
say whatever you want to.
batshit crazy things
You're like,
that
"What
were
is like,
being
is
said,
this my life?" Yeah.
and it was just like, I've got to document this. I've got to keep track of it. And
Yeah.
and again, there were witnesses, but um, and I knew I wasn't crazy because
Yeah. That's what happens.
a
Yeah.
colleague admitted she saw it and she felt horrible.
Yeah.
She felt horrible, but she was not in a position to really do anything about it. So
So
it
what about
wasn't.
the people who were in a position to do something about it but they failed or, they chose not to do anything about it?
They needed the edge. They needed someone with this particular skill set who knew how to sell, who knew how to promote, who was willing. And this was a show that was not 100%, but about 30% pay to play. So businesses would fork over money and get a 5-minute segment. And you get one once a week, every other week, however they worked it. I kept myself apart from the sales department because I wanted to play the long game because I was still a journalist at heart. I was
Right.
not a TV personality.
Mhm.
And I wasn't going to be, becoming a huckster for whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but this individual is very good, and I will hand that to this person that they're very good.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people can see through the insincerity on the air, but that's not my problem.
Right. Right.
But management loved it, and
Mm.
so they, you know, um, I came to a point where one day I said to the department head, um, I'm not going to go down the road of, it's that person or me, because
Mhm.
never, ever say that, because you will
Yeah.
be the one who's going to be shown the door.
I think a lot of people are now realizing that as soon as they begin to speak up and or say, "Is them or me," then it's you who is shown the door.
Right, because you're the one who's making waves. You are replaceable. Um, and but it again, it did a real number on me. I mean, it took me a very long time to process all that occurred
Mhm.
during that time, and the true sadness and disappointment that I felt
Mhm.
um, from doing something that I loved in
Mm.
a really great place,
Mhm.
and the adventure of it and the collaboration, but
Mhm.
there is no collaborative
Mhm.
environment. You know,
Mhm.
one quick story that kind of shows, um, because I was hired to be the senior producer and then
Okay.
shortly thereafter move into the executive producer of the show
Mm.
and a
Mhm.
co-host. Not every single day co-host, but like a fill-in co-host.
Okay.
And I loved it because it was like, wow, this is kind of a different
Mm.
kind of program. Lots of I
Mhm.
can generate some ideas, all that. Anyway, we're at the end of the show one day, and uh, this other individual and I were sitting on the sofa, and we're in a commercial break, and we had, like I'm wearing today, my little earpiece here, and the
Okay.
producer is counting down to when we were coming out of the commercial,
I
and I'm
remember
hearing,
those days.
15 seconds,
Mhm.
10, 9, the
Mhm.
countdown, and then this individual whips their head to me and says, this is my show. 3, 2, 1, and we're back on the air.
Whoa. How I
Yes. I kid you not. That
how did you
is, and
react
there
or
were people
respond
who
to that
saw it.
moment?
I composed myself. I smiled. You look back and you think about, gee, the things I could have said,
Could have said. Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
hey, during the break, you said to me, this is your show. What did you tell folks at home?
What
What
did
do
you
you
mean
mean
by
by
that?
that? Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
did. I
Right.
didn't. I
Save
played
yourself.
along. I sat there, smiled. I had my chance to say, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Blah blah blah. But you don't do that to a colleague. 3 seconds to air. Throw them a brick into their face like that. That's pathological. That, in and of itself, is batshit crazy. I had another conversation with management where I was encouraged to have a one-on-one sit-down with a meeting with this individual. And I said, well,
So
number
what's your
one,
relationship?
this individual won't have a meeting with me. They do not want to attend any regularly scheduled meetings. They saw them as pointless and useless. How you can collaborate on creating an hour-long live TV show every
When we're
day
not meeting. Yeah,
without collaborating with everybody involved, generating ideas, follow
mm,
through on segments, bouncing ideas,
right.
knowing what's coming up during all that. But this
Yeah.
person was like, no, this is my show.
Wow.
And I went back to during that management meeting. I said, I know they won't meet with me. And then the management said, well, maybe if the three of us sat down and sorted
Mhm.
things out. And I said to
What did you think about
management,
that? Mhm.
you cannot reason with batshit crazy.
There you go. Yeah.
And I will refrain what the reaction was from
Mm,
management. Um,
mm.
but they got it.
They understood.
They understood.
Yeah,
And it was soon thereafter that I finally said, I tried everything I
it's
could.
not
I even
yeah.
came up with new formats for other programming that wouldn't cost the
Mhm,
station more, but would, generate more programming and something in the afternoon that would
mhm,
help the afternoon programming.
mhm.
Everything's fine the way it is. And
My
I
goodness.
thought, well, okay, if everything's fine the way it is,
Mhm.
Godspeed. I'm out of here.
I'm out. Wow.
I'm out.
A lot of people, you are talk about courage and bravery. The fact that you recognized what it was, and when you realized that it was not going to change, you said, "I'm out of here." Do you
It was
remember
not going to change.
it was not
Yeah.
going to change? The emotional impact, because you mentioned that it affected you emotionally as well as physically. How did it affect you in both ways, mentally and physically? And how were you able to go through the journey of dealing with the trauma, but healing from the trauma?
Um, Healing from the trauma was, I'll touch on that first, was just a matter of time and talking to
Mhm.
friends and
Talking.
also deciding, um, if you've ever watched South Park, there's a character
Mhm.
named Eric Cartman.
Mhm.
And he was famous for saying, screw you guys, I'm going to go do whatever myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I did. And I created my own online program. Um, in some ways similar to what your program is, and it's a one-on-one conversation. Subject matter a bit different,
Mhm.
um, and that's how I got my mojo back, was doing
Nice.
this, and people,
Yeah.
prominent people in the
Mhm.
community saying, uh, I love what you're doing. Keep it up.
Mm. Mm.
We think that this is such a treasure trove of
Mhm.
conversations with real um, with real people, and real people
Yeah.
who've got amazing stories that contribute
Yeah.
to the fabric of the community.
Mhm.
Getting back to the first part of that question,
Mm.
um, I was doing everything that I possibly could
Mm.
to just hold myself together,
Mm.
reminding myself this isn't about you,
Mhm.
reminding myself you are not doing anything wrong,
Wrong. Yeah.
um, that this is their problem,
Mhm.
reminding myself that I had tried repeatedly to adjust, adapt, engage,
Mhm.
and to try and get, um, you know, people not on my team, but people to understand my story
Understand.
and to
Yeah.
see and understand what I was experiencing. But I would come home at the end of the day, and I'll be honest, my alcohol consumption increased, and I gained more weight, and I was just stressed, absolutely stressed. My brain felt like it was being scrambled because of lack of sleep and excessive stress. And I really had to pull myself together. And through the help of friends, I was able to, just keep it together long enough to be able to say, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
My real last conversation was with management, and talking about my exit strategy. I said
Mhm.
it was a Wednesday, and I said my exit strategy is I'm walking out the door on Friday, and I'm out of here.
That was it.
Oh well, do you think you could stay through like the May book, the
Mm.
May ratings period? Could you? And I'm like, no, no,
No.
I won't do that. I won't do that for you because I cannot
Mm.
do that to myself.
To myself. Yes. Mhm.
And I want to be really clear about something. There are times when you have to put others ahead of you. You have to put the team ahead of you,
True. Yeah.
at times. And Andrew, as well as anyone in the news business, sometimes that means having to put in an extra long shift
Yeah.
if there's breaking news or
Right.
tornadoes or whatever. And we
Mhm.
do that. We roll up our sleeves and we go, sorry, family,
I gotta stay.
I
Yeah.
gotta stay, and I really, really
Mhm.
need to do this. And
Right.
as long as you can like make it up another time to your family, as long as your family's understanding,
Mhm.
and as
Mhm.
long as like your spouse isn't, on life support,
Yeah.
in ICU or something.
Yeah.
Um, so you do. And I did that a number of times. Just trying to show up in the morning
Yeah.
was putting that ahead of my own health.
My
Am I
goodness.
making any sense? Because I feel like I'm
You are
rambling here.
listen, no, you're not rambling. I will tell you, I just wanna give you the time to say it all because I think so many times when people are just reading a snippet of what our experiences have been on social media, I think maybe some people think, "Oh, well, you guys are just whining," or "Just get over it," and "It wasn't that bad." And people don't realize that people can only take so much before you realize it's time to go. If they're not going to change the environment, then I
Mhm,
have to change. I have to change my environment. And so, like I said, I'm so thankful that you had the bravery to walk away as quickly as you did within 3 months. A lot of people stay for 3 months too late, too long. That turns into 6 months, that then turns into a year, and they're there for 14, 15, 20 years, and they continue to put
mhm,
up with this, or they leave and they go to another environment, and the
mhm,
same thing continues to happen.
mhm,
It's immobilizing. It really, really is, and so you painted such a very clear picture of how the toxicity affected you both mentally
mhm.
and physically. What do you say for those people who are experiencing this right now? But they can't leave because this is their livelihood.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. I was in uh, another short flashback story just as
Mhm.
illustration, and then
Yes.
I'll share my thoughts on you know how do I survive this? How do I
Yeah.
move on? Um, I was I was in my office, and this individual, was in my office, and we were doing something, and
Mhm.
they said to me, um, "They don't pay me enough to do this,"
Mm.
which was a
Oh,
regular complaint.
yeah,
They don't pay
obligatory.
me
You
enough
get
to
paid
do all
enough
of
for
this.
this. Yeah.
Um, and I said, "Well, I'm doing this because I love being here and I
Mhm,
love this business."
mhm,
And, the money was not that great when you're
mm.
in a small market. Um, but that's fine because it was something I loved doing.
That
And
you
I
love
was
to do
very
stuff.
fortunate. I was very fortunate that, oh, and I said that to them that, um, well, I do this because I really love doing it. No, this is
Mhm.
passion for me. And this individual then said, "Well, it must be nice to be rich."
Mm. Wow.
I
Another
swear
no-no.
to God, I'm
Mm,
not making any of this up.
mm-mm.
Um, and I let it go. But the fact of the matter is, I moved to Sarasota to retire. I
Yeah,
wasn't going down there to look for a job.
to look for a job, right. But you
I
wanted to
took this
continue to
job on
stay
because I
as
loved
passionate. Yeah,
doing. I was passionate about it, and I knew
right.
that I could bring a
Brain,
fresh
yes,
perspective because
absolutely.
the after being on for several years,
Mhm,
the show was just getting stale
mhm, mhm,
and in a rut. But again,
mhm, mhm.
uh, I wasn't welcome, and so for those folks who are in a position where you feel like you are in a living hell, where you are just so miserable, you have to do a serious self-assessment.
Yes. Next, in part two, Bob shares more tips on healing your soul and finding your passion again.